I never expected her to remember my name, let alone everything else. It was a small thing, really, the kind of thing people usually forget by the next day. But she didn't. The laundromat on Maple Street wasn't the kind of place anyone stayed longer than necessary. Rows of tired machines humming like they had stories of their own. The smell of detergent thick in the air. A flickering fluorescent light above the folding table that buzzed every few seconds. I came there every Thursday night around 10. Not because I liked it, just because it was quiet then. The college dorm laundry room was always loud. Music, shouting, people pretending they weren't lonely by being louder than they needed to be. The laundromat was different. Just machines, the occasional tired person, and the ticking clock above the door. That night, I was folding a t-shirt I'd already folded twice. Not because it needed it, just because I didn't want to check my phone again. 3 unsent messages sat in the chat window. None of them felt right enough to send. The machine behind me beeped loudly, breaking the silence. I leaned back against it, letting the warm metal press through my hoodie. That's when the door opened. The little bell above it chimed once. I didn't look at first. People came and went all the time. But then I heard her voice. Of course, the one night I bring the heavy blanket. It wasn't complaining exactly. More like she was talking to herself. I glanced up. She was standing near the entrance holding a large laundry bag against her hip. Mid-40s, maybe a little older. Dark hair pulled loosely back like she had tied it in a hurry. A soft gray sweater, sleeves pushed halfway up her arms. She noticed me looking and gave a polite half-smile. The kind adults give when they're acknowledging someone but not really starting a conversation. I nodded back and went back to folding. A few minutes passed. Machines hummed. Water sloshed. Someone's dryer rattled loudly in the back. She struggled a little with the coin machine, tapping the slot twice. Then she looked over again. "You're Sam, right?" I blinked. It took me a second. "Yeah." She smiled properly this time. "I thought so. You're Daniel's friend." Daniel. Her son. We had a few classes together last year, before he transferred to another campus. I'd been to their house maybe 3 times. Usually quick visits, group study, pizza, loud conversations in the living room. I remembered her bringing snacks once. That was it. "Mrs. Carter, right?" I said. She laughed quietly. "Just Elena is fine. Daniel moved out months ago, remember? Right?" I rubbed the back of my neck. "Yeah, I forgot." She loaded the washing machine slowly, shaking out the blanket before stuffing it in. I noticed small things without meaning to. The way she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The way her fingers tapped lightly on the lid while the machine filled. After a moment, she walked to the folding table near me. "Still in the dorms?" she asked. "Yeah." She nodded like that explained everything. We stood there in that soft humming noise of spinning clothes. Not awkward exactly, just quiet. She folded one corner of the blanket absent-mindedly while waiting for the machine to start. I caught myself glancing at her hands. She noticed, not in a confrontational way, just a small flick of her eyes. Then she smiled again. "You always come this late. Less crowded." She seemed to think about that. Then the washer finally started with a heavy spin. She exhaled and leaned lightly against the table. "You know," she said, almost casually, "I usually come around this time, too." I nodded slowly. Neither of us said anything for a few seconds. Then she picked up one of my folded shirts and smoothed the sleeve. "You fold things very carefully." I shrugged. "Too much time." She gave a quiet little laugh. And for some reason, it stayed in the room longer than the sound of the machines. When she finally gathered her things to leave 40 minutes later, she paused near the door. "See you next Thursday, Sam." It wasn't a question. The bell above the door chimed again as she stepped out into the night. I stood there a long moment after. The laundromat suddenly felt louder. When I finally checked my phone again, there was a new message. From a number I didn't recognize. Just 6 words. "This is Elena. Don't skip Thursday." The next Thursday came quicker than it should have. Or maybe I just noticed time more that week. I told myself it didn't matter. It was just a laundromat. Just a familiar face. Someone I already technically knew. Still, around 9:40 that night, I caught myself checking the clock more than once. By 10, I was already there. The same machines hummed. The same flickering light buzzed above the folding table. I loaded my clothes slower than usual, pretending to read the instructions on the detergent box. The doorbell chimed at exactly 10:07. I didn't turn immediately, but I knew it was her. "You're early this time." Her voice had that same casual warmth, like we had been doing this for years instead of once. I glanced back. Elena stood there with the same oversized laundry bag, except tonight she had a small thermos tucked under one arm. "Maybe," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "Or maybe you didn't want to skip Thursday." I let out a quiet breath through my nose. "Maybe that." She smiled, satisfied with the answer, and started loading her washer again. For a while we didn't talk much. Just the rhythm of small things. Detergent pouring, buttons pressing, the low thump of machines starting their spin cycles. When her washer finally settled into its steady hum, she walked over to the folding table again. "This place is colder tonight," she said. She unscrewed the lid of the thermos and poured something into the small metal cap. "Tea." I hesitated, then nodded. She handed it over carefully, her fingers brushing mine for a split second. It wasn't dramatic, just skin meeting skin for the briefest moment. Still, I noticed it. The tea was warm, slightly sweet. "Mint," she said. "My mother used to make it like this." I took another sip. "Your mom's still around?" She shook her head gently. "No, it's been a while." Her voice didn't break. She said the way people say something they've already carried for years. Then she leaned back against the table, folding her arms loosely. "You know," she said, "Daniel used to hate this tea." I smiled a little. "Yeah, that sounds like him. He said it tasted like toothpaste." We both laughed softly. The sound echoed strangely in the nearly empty laundromat. After a moment, she tilted her head slightly. "You and him were close." "Close enough," I said. "Mostly classes and complaining about professors." "And now?" I shrugged. "He moved. People move." She watched me for a second longer than expected. "You say that like it happens a lot." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked down at the folding table and started smoothing a wrinkle in a towel that wasn't really there. "People get busy," I said finally. She nodded slowly. "I know that one." The machines spun quietly behind us. Outside, a car passed, headlights sliding across the windows for a moment before disappearing again. After a while, she spoke again, softer this time. "Divorce does that too." I looked up. She said it casually, but her fingers had started lightly tracing the rim of the thermos lid. "Daniel didn't tell you?" she asked. "No." "Well," she said with a small shrug, "now you know." She didn't explain more, and I didn't ask. Somehow the silence that followed didn't feel awkward, just honest. Our shoulders were a little closer now than before, close enough that I could feel the warmth from her sweater sleeve. My mind kept doing something annoying, imagining things. What if someone walked in and saw us like this? What if Daniel came back one day? What if this was just normal and I was the only one overthinking it? Elena suddenly reached over and adjusted the crooked fold of the towel in front of me. "You missed a corner," she said. Her hand stayed there a second longer than necessary. Then she looked at me, not smiling, just looking. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. I'd realize later. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The third Thursday didn't start the way the others did. I almost didn't go. Not because I didn't want to, that was the problem. All week I kept replaying small things. The tea, the way she corrected the fold of that towel, the way she looked at me like she was studying something quietly interesting. It shouldn't have meant anything. She was my friend's mom, 40-something, divorced, someone who had probably lived 3 lifetimes before I even finished college. Still, at 9:58 that night, I was pushing open the laundromat door. The bell chimed. Empty, just the humming machines and the same buzzing light. I felt something strange then. Not disappointment exactly, just a small shift in the room. Maybe she wasn't coming. I started to wash her anyway. 10 minutes passed. Then the bell rang again. Elena, I said before I even turned. But it wasn't her. It was Mark, another guy from campus. Mechanical engineering. Loud laugh. Always borrowing people's chargers and never returning them. He squinted at me. Thumb. Yeah. He tossed his laundry bag on a machine. Didn't know you came here. Sometimes. He nodded toward the empty chairs. Place is dead. Usually is. We stood there a minute while his washer filled. Then he said casually, I came here last week too. Something tightened in my chest. Oh, yeah, saw you. I try to keep folding my shirt like that sentence didn't land weird. Did you? Hum. He grinned slightly. You were talking to someone. I didn't look up. Probably. Older lady. My hand slowed. Gray sweater. I shrugged. Maybe. He leaned against the machine, watching me in that way people do when they think they've noticed something. Looked like you two knew each other. Before I could answer, the doorbell chimed again. Both of us glanced up. Elena stepped inside, slightly out of breath like she had walked fast. Her eyes went to me first, then to Mark. Just a flicker. Hi, she said politely. Mark nodded. Evening. She moved toward the washer, but I noticed the way her shoulders stiffened slightly, like someone suddenly remembering where they were standing. I walked over after a moment. You're late, I said quietly. She gave a small smile. Traffic, but her voice felt different tonight. Careful. She loaded the machine quickly this time. No termos. No linugiring. Mark's washer beeped loudly behind us. You two know each other? He asked, walking over. Elena wiped her hands lightly on her sweater. My son went to school with Sam. Mark nodded slowly. He didn't say more, but the silence that followed felt heavier, like someone had turned the lights a little brighter. For a while, we all stayed in our separate spaces. Machine spinning. Mark scrolling his phone. Me pretending to organize clothes that were already folded. Elena sitting on one of the plastic chairs, arms loosely crossed. Eventually, Mark grabbed his bag. See you around, man, he said to me. Her face was closer than usual. Close enough to see the faint lines at the corner of her eyes. Close enough to notice she wasn't smiling. Her voice dropped. Sam, just my name? Nothing after it. My brain started filling the silence with things that probably shouldn't exist. What if? She looked at my mouth for half a second, then back at my eyes. And for one strange moment, it felt like the room leaned forward with us. But then she stepped back, just one step, and that was enough to put the air back between us. The next week, I told myself I wouldn't go. Not because Elena had done anything wrong, just because the air between us had started carrying too many unfinished sentences. Still, Thursday night came, and by 9:50, I was already walking down Maple Street. The laundromat windows glowed the same soft yellow as always. Machines turning. The flickering light buzzing like it never learned its lesson. But when I stepped inside, Elena wasn't there. I waited longer than usual to start the washer. 10 minutes. 15. Then my phone buzzed. A message. I'm around the corner. If you're here, walk outside for a minute. No smiley face. No explanation. Just that. I stepped out into the cool night air. She was sitting on a low bench near the closed pharmacy next door. Her gray sweater again, arms folded loosely around herself. Streetlight resting across her shoulders. She looked up when she heard the door. You came. You asked. I sat down beside her, leaving a small gap between us. For a moment, we just listened to the quiet traffic passing somewhere down the street. You didn't go inside, I said. She shook her head. I didn't want it tonight. Because of Mark. Partly. Her fingers rubbed slowly against each other, like she was warming them even though it wasn't that cold. Then she sighed. You know what bothers me most? I waited. That it bothered me. I looked at her. What do you mean? She turned slightly toward me. The way he looked at us. Her voice stayed calm, but something behind it felt raw. Like he'd already decided what we were doing. And what were we doing? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked out at the empty street again. That's the problem, she said quietly. I don't know. A car passed, headlights sliding across the pavement. She leaned forward slightly, elbows on her knees. You're Daniel's friend, she continued. I know. You're 23. 22. She exhaled through her nose. That doesn't help. For a second, I almost smiled. But she wasn't joking. And I'm 45, she said. The number sat there between us. Heavy but honest. Do you know what that means? She asked. It means you drink better tea than I do. She glanced at me sideways. That's not funny. I wasn't trying to be. Silence again. Then she said something softer. You look at me differently. I blinked. What? Don't pretend you don't. Her voice wasn't accusing, just tired of pretending. I noticed things, she said. The way you watch when I talk. The way you go quiet when our hands touch. My chest tightened. You noticed that. I notice a lot. She turned fully toward me now. And I should stop this. The word should hung there like it didn't quite belong. Then why didn't you? I asked. Her eyes searched mine for a long second. Because she didn't have an easy answer. Finally she spoke. Because it's been a long time since someone looked at me like that. The sentence came out almost like a confession. No drama. No tears. Just truth. I didn't know what to say to that. So I didn't say anything. The bench felt smaller somehow. The distance between us almost gone. Her hand rested on the bench beside mine. Not touching. Close enough to feel the warmth. She looked down at our hands. Then back at me. And for a moment, it felt like she was deciding something. Slowly. Carefully. Sam, she said quietly. Yeah. She hesitated. Then asked the question that changed the air between us. Tell me honestly, what do you think you're doing with me? I didn't answer her question right away. Not because I didn't have one. Just because every answer felt like the wrong one. Elena watched me carefully, her hands still resting on the bench between us. The streetlight above cast a soft glow across her face, catching the faint lines near her eyes. What do you think you're doing with me? She had asked. I swallowed. I don't think I'm doing anything, I said finally. I just keep showing up. She held my gaze for a moment longer. Then she looked away. A slow breath left her shoulders, like she had expected something else. Yeah, she said quietly. That's what I thought. The sentence wasn't angry, but wasn't light either. It felt like a door closing halfway. After that night, something changed. The following Thursday, I went to the laundromat again. 10 o'clock. Same machines. Same buzzing light. But Elena didn't come. At first I assumed she was just late. So I folded my clothes slower than usual. Checked the door every time the bell chimed. But it was never her. The next week I went again. Still nothing. By the third Thursday, I stopped pretending I wasn't waiting. I sat at the folding table longer than necessary, staring at the empty chair she used to sit in. It was strange how quickly a routine could become personal. A few days later, I ran into Daniel on campus. He had come back for a weekend visit. We grabbed coffee near the library. Mom's been weird lately, he said casually, stirring sugar into his cup. I tried to sound normal. Weird how? He shrugged. Just quiet. That didn't narrow it down much. Then he added something that caught on my chest. Her ex called last month. I looked up. Your dad? No, Daniel said. The one after him. Right? I had forgotten there was someone else in the story. He wants to try again, Daniel said. Apparently. Something inside me shifted slightly. Does she want that? He shrugged again. No idea. She won't talk about it. We sat there a moment. Then he looked at me strangely. You haven't been over in a while. No, you should stop by sometime. I nodded, but didn't promise anything. That night, I walked past the laundromat without going inside. Just kept walking down Maple Street. The pharmacy bench was empty. The streetlight hummed softly overhead. I stood there longer than I meant to. My phone was in my hand before I realized it. Her contacts still saved as Elena. No last name. Just that. I opened the message window. Typed a few words. Are you okay? Then erased them. Typed again. Did I say something wrong that night? Deleted that too. The cursor blinked patiently. Waiting. I thought about the way she had looked at me on that bench. The way she said I should stop this. Maybe she had. Maybe that was the whole point. After a while, I locked my phone and slipped it back into my pocket. I didn't feel heartbroken. That wasn't the right word. I felt paused. Like life had started a sentence and then just forgot to finish it. When I finally walked away, the bench was still empty. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't wait for the laundromat door to open. 2 weeks later, it rained. Not the loud kind. Just a slow, steady drizzle that made the sidewalks shine and the streetlights blur a little at the edges. I wasn't planning to go anywhere that night. But around 9:30, I found myself putting on my hoodie anyway. Old habits move quietly. You don't always notice them happening. The laundromat windows glowed the same way they always did. Machines humming. That same flickering light above the folding table. But I didn't go inside. Instead, I walked past it. Past the pharmacy. And then I stopped. Elena's house was only another block away. I had been there before, years ago. Back when Daniel still lived there. Loud afternoons, pizza boxes on the coffee table, someone always arguing about homework. Tonight the street felt different. Quieter. The porch light was on. I stood at the edge of the walkway longer than I should have. My brain kept offering excuses. You're just saying hi. Daniel told you to stop by. You're being ridiculous. Still, my hand lifted before I fully decided to knock. 2 soft taps on the door. For a second, nothing happened. Then footsteps. The door opened slowly. Elena stood there. Her hair was loose tonight, slightly damp like she had just come from the shower. A simple sweater again. No makeup that I could see. She looked surprised, but not shocked. Just my name. Hi, I said. For a moment we just stood there, rain tapping softly on the porch railing. I didn't expect, she started, then stopped. Yeah, I said quietly. Me neither. She stepped back slightly. Do you want to come in? The house smelled like tea. Of course it did. We ended up standing in the kitchen. Not sitting, just leaning against opposite counters like 2 people trying not to cross a line drawn somewhere invisible. She poured tea into 2 mugs. Mid again. When she handed one to me, our fingers brushed briefly. Neither of us reacted, but neither of us ignored it either. I thought you stopped coming, she said after a moment. I did. She nodded slowly. That was probably smart. The word probably hung in the air. I looked down at the mug in my hands. I didn't come to argue, I said. I didn't think you did. Another quiet pause. Then she leaned back against the counter, arms folded loosely. Daniel told me you saw him. Yeah, and he probably mentioned things. A few. Her eyes dropped to the floor for a second. My ex called, she said simply. I know. He wants to try again. And she shrugged gently. I haven't answered him. That surprised me. I looked up. Why not? She met my eyes then. Because the answer was sitting right there between us. You, she said softly. Not dramatic. Just honest. My chest tightened. Elena, I know, she said quickly. It's complicated. It's inappropriate. It's real, I finished. The kitchen went quiet again. The refrigerator hummed softly behind us. Rain tapped the window. She looked at me carefully, like she was studying whether I understood the weight of what she just said. You're 22, she said. I know. You're my son's friend. I know. And if we step even a little further into this, it changes things. I nodded. I know that too. Neither of us moved, but the distance between us felt smaller now. Finally, she asked quietly, so why did you come tonight? I thought about it for a second. Then I told the truth, because not saying anything felt worse. Her shoulders softened slightly at that. Not relief, just recognition. Slowly, she stepped a little closer. Not touching, just close enough that the space between us felt warm. She looked at me for a long moment, then gave the smallest, tired smile. Okay, she said softly. Just that. Okay. It didn't change everything overnight. That would have been easier to explain. Instead, things moved slowly, the way quiet decisions usually do. For the first week after that night in the kitchen, nothing dramatic happened. No long messages, no late-night calls, just a small shift in the rhythm of things. On Thursday, I still walked down Maple Street, but this time I didn't go inside the laundromat. I stopped at the bench near the pharmacy instead. The same one. The street light hummed softly above it, casting that familiar warm glow across the pavement. A few minutes later, Elena appeared from around the corner. No kitty, just walking like someone who already knew where she was going. She sat beside me with a small paper cup in her hand. Black coffee, she said, handing it over. You always looked like you wanted one. I smiled a little. And you? She lifted her thermos slightly. Mean Theo. Some things didn't change. We sat there quietly, watching cars pass at the end of the street. Not touching, not explaining anything. Just there. That became the routine. Thursday nights, the bench. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we didn't. Sometimes she told small stories about Daniel when he was a kid. How he once tried to microwave a fork. How he refused to drink her tea because it smelled like toothpaste. Sometimes I talked about classes, about the weird feeling of finishing college and not knowing what came next. The conversations were never heavy, but they mattered. Weeks passed. Spring crept slowly into the air. One evening, Elena showed up later than usual. She sat down beside me with a quiet sigh. I called him today, she said. Her ex. I didn't ask questions. She watched the street for a moment before continuing. I told him it wouldn't work. Something in my chest relaxed without making a sound. You sure? I asked gently. She nodded. Yes. Then she added with the faintest smile, he doesn't drink mint tea anyway. That made me laugh. The kind of quiet laugh that only belongs to certain moments. Over time, the space between us on that bench got smaller. Not in a rushed way, just naturally. One night, while we were talking about nothing important, her shoulder leaned lightly against mine. Neither of us moved away. The streetlight hummed above us, like it always had. Cars passed. Someone down the block laughed too loudly. Life kept moving. But the pause I had felt weeks ago, the unfinished sentence, it started finding its ending. Not a dramatic one, just a quiet continuation. One Thursday, Elena looked at the laundromat window across the street and smiled. You know, she said, this whole thing started because of laundry. And tea, I added, and you folding shirts like they were museum pieces. I shrugged. Someone had to do it right. She shook her head, smiling to herself. Then she reached over and gently brushed a small piece of lint off my sleeve. The same small gesture from weeks ago. But this time, she didn't pull her hand away immediately. We sat there a moment longer under the streetlight. Warm coffee in my hands, mint tea in hers. And for the first time since that first Thursday, nothing between us felt paused anymore, just quietly moving forward. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories would you like to hear next?